The late afternoon sun, a fiery orb in the summer sky, cast long shadows as Art Vance, a retired archivist with a scholar's gentle demeanor and a deliberate stride, boarded the Line 17 tram. He'd just left the sun-drenched conservatory, having spent hours among rare orchids with a dear old university friend. Their conversation, a tapestry woven with shared memories and intellectual banter, had erased the decades. Now, all Art craved was the quiet sanctuary of his apartment, a warm cup of Earl Grey, and a chance to rest his weary knees. He settled into his customary window seat at the rear. With practiced ease, Art propped his ebony walking stick against the seat in front and carefully placed his wide-brimmed Panama hat on his lap. The rhythmic sway of the tram and the low murmur of fellow passengers were a soothing balm, a familiar score to a life well lived. Suddenly, an abrupt lurch threw him forward, sending his satchel skittering down the aisle. With a soft groan, Art rose, cane in hand, and shuffled to retrieve it. When he returned, his heart sank. His seat was occupied, and not by just anyone. Slouched arrogantly where Art had been moments before sat Inspector Thorne, the Thorne Blackwood. He wasn't in uniform, but his menacing aura was as palpable as any badge. Blackwood was notorious throughout the Shadowbrook district for his heavy-handed tactics, especially against the district's working-class residents. Scores of complaints had vanished into thin air, thanks to his father, Chief Superintendent Alaric Blackwood. Art blinked. On the floor, crushed beneath Thorne's polished boot, was his Panama hat. Art approached with quiet dignity and tapped Thorne's shoulder. "Excuse me, young man," he said softly. "That was my seat." Thorne didn't even glance up. "Didn't see your name on it, old-timer. Try somewhere else." "I was sitting there," Art replied, his voice unwavering. "Please." Thorne smirked. "Well, now I am." "Get lost." Around them, an unsettling silence spread like a creeping mist. Eyes darted away. No one spoke. Art gripped the rail for support. "I can't stand the entire journey. I'm asking respectfully." Thorne finally turned, his eyes like chips of ice. "You're lucky I'm not on duty, because if I were, you'd already be in restraints." "I've done nothing wrong," Art stated, but even as he spoke, he knew it wouldn't matter. With Thorne, it never did. Thorne leaned in close. "Say one more word, and I'll drag your scrawny old hide off this tram myself." Art's hands trembled, but his voice remained steady. "This isn't just about me. It's about how you treat this community. You think you can get away with anything because of your father? But not this time." Without drawing attention, Art reached into his coat and activated the discreet recorder on his pocket device. "You threatening me now?" Thorne chuckled, but a tremor in his voice betrayed him. "I'm just telling you I'm not afraid." Thorne's laughter erupted again, louder this time. "Man, you're just another nobody. I'll crush you." He smiled as he said it, that a woman near the front, Eleanor, nervously rose. "Sir," she called out, "you could take my seat, please." Art nodded gratefully, but didn't move. "Thank you, ma'am. But this is about more than comfort. I have to make a stand." Murmurs began to ripple through the passengers. Heads turned back toward them. Eyes met. Then Thorne snapped. He struck Art hard across the face. Gasps echoed through the tram. The blow sent Art stumbling against a pole. Thorne grabbed his shirt, shaking him violently. "You think you can disrespect me? You think this tram, full of nobodies, can save you?" Just then, the driver slammed the brakes. The tram screeched to a halt. The driver, Marcus Mac Jenkins, stood up, his eyes blazing. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Mac roared, storming down the aisle. Thorne growled. "This isn't your business." Mac stepped between them, pulling Thorne off. "Eli, on this tram, it is—" Thorne swung wildly with rage. Mac ducked, then landed a solid punch that sent Thorne crashing back into his seat. Chaos erupted. Screams. Phones appeared, a rising tide of disbelief. Thorne staggered up, blood on his lip. "You're finished, man. I'll have you fired. Arrested. I'll bury you." "You're not an inspector today," Max said evenly. "You're a brute, and I don't allow brutes on my tram." He hit the door release. Thorne stood frozen, shaking with fury. "You heard me," Max said. "Get off my tram." When Thorne didn't move, Max shoved him hard. The officer stumbled off the steps, turned back with a sneer. "You're all going to pay for this," he hissed. The doors hissed shut. Silence reigned for a moment. Then Art sat down, slow and deliberate, blood on his cheek and resolve in his heart. He reached into his coat, stopped the recording, and glanced at the screen. Clear video, clear audio, every threat, every slur, it was all there. He looked out the window as the tram rumbled forward again. This time, he knew he wasn't the only one watching. Later that night, Art uploaded the video, adding a caption that detailed Thorne's vicious nature and his father's complicity. Within 24 hours, the video went viral. The community was not surprised by Thorne's behavior, but they were shocked that he had attacked an elderly man. Art was hailed as a hero for his courage, and Mac was lauded for his swift intervention. The video was shared endlessly, sparking hundreds of comments of outrage and solidarity. Many shared their own painful experiences with Thorne's injustices, recounting how other officers had been powerless due to the chief superintendent's threats and influence. As the discussion grew, the situation escalated, putting immense pressure on the Shadowbrook District Constabulary to act before the community took to the streets in protest. The public demanded accountability and justice, and the police could no longer ignore the problem that a disciplinary hearing was convened for both Thorne Blackwood and Chief Superintendent Alaric Blackwood. Thorne was charged with assault on civilians, false arrests, and manipulating evidence. Chief Blackwood was accused of negligence, covering up his son's misconduct, and creating a hostile work environment for officers who dare to speak out. Thorne Blackwood was dishonorably discharged from the constabulary, losing his badge, and now facing civil lawsuit from past and present victims. His father was demoted 3 ranks, stripped of his power, and placed under the authority of a former subordinate. A collective sigh of relief swept through Shadowbrook District. Justice, it seemed, had finally arrived. The police department began the slow process of rebuilding trust with the public, and victims finally started their healing, knowing their voices had been heard and their suffering acknowledged. The case became a shameful chapter for the Blackwood family, who, consumed by their power, had believed themselves invincible. Thorne Blackwood deeply regretted his bullying behavior and abuse of power, especially physically assaulting Art. He wished he could turn back time, but it was too late. His life, as he knew it, was over, and he had to live with the consequences. Art, meanwhile, felt an immense sense of relief and profound happiness. The community was finally free from the tyranny of Thorne Blackwood, and people could now live without fear. As calm slowly returned, Art knew his fight wasn't entirely over. Though the Blackwoods were removed from power, the wounds of years of intimidation ran deep. Justice, Art knew, couldn't stop there. The community needed to heal, and for that, it needed lasting change. With the support of other victims and Mac, Art decided to create a local association dedicated to defending citizens' rights against abuses of power. They organized community meetings where everyone could share their stories, their pain, and support each other. These gatherings became a space for liberating expression, and the association quickly gained influence. With funds raised and growing support, they began to push for reform within the constabulary. The new chief, aware of the importance of restoring trust, agreed to introduce new measures of transparency and accountability. Workshops were implemented for officers aimed at reforming the culture of fear and silence that had reigned for too long. Change was slow but perceptible for Thorne Blackwood. Stripped of his privileges, he found himself isolated, despised even by those he had once supported. Regret continued to haunt him, but he was no longer in a position to repair the damage he had caused. He tried to disappear, but the community did not easily forgive the abuses of power that had marked so many lives. His father, once all-powerful, was reduced to a bitter man trying to reintegrate into a system he had long dominated. Years later, Art, now a respected figure for his resilience and commitment, received a medal from the city for his contribution to social justice. In his speech, he declared that although the road had been difficult, the community had proven that solidarity could triumph over fear. And so, This chapter of their story closed not in bitterness, but in the rebirth of a stronger community, united by the fight for truth and justice. Art, for his part, was finally at peace, knowing his actions had had a lasting impact on the lives of many citizens, and that the next generation would grow up without the fear of oppressors. What are your thoughts on Art's courageous stand and the community's powerful response? Do you believe stories like this can truly inspire meaningful, real-world change? Share your insights.